Grand Rising, everybody. Grand Rising. Greetings to you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for being here. Peace and blessings to everybody. Good Sunday. Good Sunday. I'm hoping that everybody is able to at least exercise this day as a day of rest, as a day of regroup, as a day of self reflection, just to be able to take a big pause for a moment because we go so hard and we go so long, and everything for me sometimes becomes a blur. And so Sundays are always good for me to just give myself permission to just kind of take a moment, just take a moment, y'all. So thank y'all for coming in. T. Smith is always one of the first to be in the room, and I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. We got Jaga in the house. Thank you. Greetings, peace, and blessings to you. We have Miss Rachel Banks. Peace and blessings to you as well. Thank you for coming on in. We got the great Philly 2K24. Salute and respect to you as well. Thank y'all for being here. You know, I I don't know why, but I have this huge heart for and compassion for people, and not just people, but people that have fallen upon hard times and need some compassion. Um, in my own way, I'm always trying to help be there for other people, assist where I can, bless somebody at least, or somebody's every day. It keeps me humble. It keeps me grateful. It keeps me grateful because as soon as I think that I want to get on my pity pot, man, listen, it's a stark reminder that, girl, you don't have nothing to complain about. Okay. Oh my gosh, we got KB in the house. Thank you for coming in. You caught alive. Yes, you did. Well, thank you for being here, KB. You made my day, my morning and my day. Thank you so kindly. I appreciate your presence. Hey, Miss CC, thank you for coming in to another live stream. Extremely appreciative for everybody being in on this live. But as I was saying, I just it keeps me grounded. However, sometimes it's disheartening because some of these uh, video clips that I'm going to show is going to really kind of put things in perspective, and probably for some of us become more aware of, you know, us. Sometimes we get to living in our own little bubble or whatnot. And, people are really struggling out here. This country is really not serving its citizens well, right? So it's just disheartening. But I think, I'm the one to kind of bring, or I'm one of the people to bring some of these topics to surface because they need to be talked about. We need to be reminded that it's okay for us to get outside of ourselves and in our own little way do what we can to be part of the solution, right? So welcome in, T. Oh, I greeted T. Smith. Okay, well, you typed again. I don't know why I thought I caught you at the beginning. So happy Sunday to you, KB. Yes, thank you for being here. So we're going to get right into it, because there's, a couple of different topics that I want to kind of cover when it comes to homelessness. But before I go ahead and show this first video clip, I want to just bring out verbally a couple of, reasons why, to preface the video, um, because it's going to be kind of alarming, right? Just seeing it in real time and how people are out here really living in what they consider to be the most powerful country in the world. And I can see why we are, and have become the laughing stock of the world. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good place to be, falling so far from grace in the context of superpowers in this world that we living in, right? So, we have a lot of resources that are not properly allocated, if they're there at all. We got this migrant issue with the borders and all of that, so it's no secret that those illegal immigrants are coming in, and the politicians and the government programs are willingly just giving them all of the resources that are intended for the citizens and the taxpayers of this country. And every time I sound like a broken record, but it pisses me off. It really makes me angry because it's like you're just doing this in our face, and this is out of pocket. It's like we have no say as to where our tax monies go. We just work, we pay taxes, and we sit back and we let the politicians and the powers that be run the show. And it's just it's not cool. So income inequality, I'm going to show a video on California, and why that particular state has been hit so hard with the homelessness problem. And I think one of the most evident issues is because of the cost of living, the rent, the property values, the real estate. It's just it for most, it's the wages have not really increased. So now we're at maybe 15 to 20 bucks, depending on what, classification or what job you're into. But look how long it took us to get there. And by that time, the cost of the living has at least doubled or tripled, right? So with all of that, now we've got to deal with this system failing us on a mental health and substance abuse level. So the drugs with the open borders, all of this fentanyl and all of these illegal drugs being smuggled into this country, I think it's going to get a lot darker. So we have to kind of prepare ourselves and at least be aware of the possibilities of our surroundings, because no matter where you live, it's going to have a trickle down effect. I think everybody is going to be affected, no matter what. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the first video. And this video there's a videographer that did this podcast, and he's going to actually, I like the way he laid this out. He actually is, he's going to show the homeless, the really, really bad homeless areas. And then he's going to, in the very next clip, he's going to show a stark contrast with a gentrified area, the beaches, the high rises, where there's no dirt, there's no or not dirt, garbage, there's no stray animals, there's no people sleeping on the street, you don't see people doing drugs on the corners. And it just shows a stark contrast in how politics and how by design all of this is integrated into this humongous problem that we are dealing with, not just from a level of California, but on a national level as well. So let me get a little housekeeping going on here. And I'll put some music on. Y'all let me know if the music is too loud. I think I kind of got it down where to a level where I don't think it's too bad, but put a 1 in the chat if it's pretty good and a 2 if it's too loud, if you don't mind. Thank you kindly.
I spent the month of October 2022 in California. I drove up and down the state to capture how this place has changed. I saw devastating homelessness, amazing ocean views, and some fascinating communities in the desert. California has a lot to love, but it's troubled in ways like no other state. It's been said that as California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. I think you'd agree that a lot of the stuff I captured is troubling if this is indeed our country's future. Here's an unedited view of some of the footage I captured on the trip.
So I want to pause it there for a second to draw the point that there's a lot of land, and not just in California, but in this country that is barren. And whether it has any type of infrastructure or it doesn't, it's still available land that can be built upon. So, in my opinion, like, okay, so just for instance, if you're driving across you're like truckers, or you're taking a trip across state lines, I don't care what state you go into or you're leaving, you're going to see a lot of open land, right? But then they have us all herded into these metropolitan areas, and they are more prevalent than the rural areas, because that's how the do dirties, that's what I like to call them, the do dirties, actually herd and keep control over the masses when you centralize them into big areas. And that's like that, to me, that is likened to when you have animals in a zoo, right? And so you're putting all of these animals into a same cage, like monkeys. I've seen like they learn to cohabitate, but because they're such territorial animals, they end up fighting, and they end up fighting for territory, and they get out of character often, and they look bipolar, because I've watched monkeys for years, chimpanzees, in confined settings, they act totally different than they do out in the wild. And I'm not comparing humans to monkeys, but it's not a far-fetched comparison, in my opinion, because people often do the same thing. People tend to be a little more paranoid, a little more easily agitated when you're around people that you don't know. And so, not to get off topic, but just like looking at this first clip in this video, so you see all those tents up under the bridge, all of them are neck and neck, everybody's stepping over each other, everybody is smushed in together. But then he goes, to another local area not too far down the road, and you get all this land that's just open, and there it's serving no purpose. And so when the do dirties say that we're overpopulated, that's bullshit, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it, because as you travel and navigate it just specifically through this country, you see nothing but land, whether it's underdeveloped or there's stuff being developed on it, it's still open, and there's still enough to accommodate most of us.
Is anybody in there? Hey, can I talk to you?
Look at the difference. This is by design, y'all. Just look of the difference of how all of this is constructed. People are walking, their demeanor is different, they're holding hands. And as we go to navigate through some of this footage, you're going to just see the behaviors of people, their appearance, the lack of upkeep, compared to those that are relaxed in their own gentrified neighborhoods, or their upkept and valuable neighborhoods, their beachfront properties. This is just there's such a disparity between the two, and it's so noticeable that it's hard to really imagine that all of this is by happenstance. I'm only going to do certain clips, because there are certain points, pinpoints I would like to bring out, but I am providing this because I want to give a visual as to this. These are just various parts of California. These people have established community.
All right. What's that?
Okay, give me a second. I'm going to go fast forward to the one thing that I want to mention is that they have definitely established community, but that's the only way that things are going to change. We live in such an individualistic society that everybody's doing everything on their own. You got single parents out here pulling rent and mortgage prices, and having responsibilities that it normally takes two people or more in order to manage. And you're dealing with people feeling like they're alone in this world, and that's one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, for homelessness, is because there's lack of community, there's no family support, or just no support circle where people are looking out for each other. That has been lost, and that's one of the reasons I feel like the homelessness and the mental illness, and the mental health has deteriorated so much, because we were not put here to be alone. We were put here to cohabitate and to be with one another. That's why God gave us, in my opinion, the ability to procreate, and that people can't come from just one person. So if I can't just have a baby on my own and procreate and deliver a child by myself without the participation of a man, then why would I be successful? And why would the situation be optimal for us to raise children alone? And so, when with the homelessness, one thing that you will see in this footage is that people they're destitute because they're alone and they don't have anybody to depend on. And the government don't give a shit about you. They don't care nothing about you. So you're looking to all of these governmental programs and these outside resources that are federally funded to substantiate and to kind of supplement what you got going on, and to give you some hope and a leg up so you can reestablish yourself, because most people that are homeless didn't start out that way. Most aren't. And we're going to also get into some statistics on the demographics of homelessness and how people are affected and how they got to that point. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to show a little bit more of this video, because I just want to set the ground. Look at these rabbits, y'all. Okay, so these rabbits are, even though they're outside, first of all, they're in their natural habitat, but their pen is cleaner than some of these people's pens. And so, you know, that's what this has resulted to. And this is California. I remember, what did they used to call it? The great they've got some nicknames for California, but it used to be a place where everybody wanted to go. I remember living in the South, and how when I was growing up, and how I everybody was like, I'm going to California. I'm relocating and selling my house and going to California. And I couldn't figure out what all the hoopla was about. And then I went to California, and I was like, okay, well, to each his own. I mean, it was a nice state, but I came from Florida. So, we had beaches, we had sunshine. That wasn't, California was not really that different from what I was accustomed to. But this is where we are. This is 2022 to 2023, and now we're at the beginning of 2024. So we got, let me look at the chat. El Boogie, I'm sorry, Kwame says this is coming to a lot of cities with the bad policies that are being voted in. Yes, and that is absolutely, that is from the politicians. This is like, that's what I was just saying, Kwame, how they have control over the monies, the policies. We're not voting on We're not voting on a local level like we are focused in on a national election. And it really is, it starts from the inside, and it just broadens, and it scopes out. And we have to, there's so many different components to why we are where we are. And I think a lot of everybody has a little bit of blame to lay. We all have done our part, even if it's just not speaking up, or not going to the school board meetings, or not going to the to vote locally, not knowing who's running. I remember, and I have to be transparent. So I was in my 20s, and the first time I went to go vote, I didn't know anybody that was on the ballot besides the vice president and the president. I really didn't. And so, of course, like on the ballot, I don't know how it is now, but in the state that I was in, all of the local elections were on the ballot first, and then the very last questions were the vice president and the president elects, right? And here I am. I remember feeling so stupid because I was like, I felt like I was playing a game, a guessing game, and I was going off of the names. And or I would have I tried to do a little research the day before I went to go, or the morning of I went to go vote. And so I would write little key points down next to the names. But then when I got into the voting booth, there I didn't recognize half of those names there. And so we have to be accountable, and we can't always place blame out, outside of ourselves. We have to recognize that we are also responsible for the outcome of where our lives go. And that goes all the way down to where you live, if you move, where you're relocating, how to vet the new spaces that are, options for you to relocate, what schools are there, how it's going to affect the family, if it's family friendly. If like Las Vegas is not a great place to raise a family, you have a lot of outside influences that aren't healthy for the family core. So these are just some things that I'm shooting out, that collectively we can all do a little something in order to get to a place where we can actually, it starts to make some sense. Because right now there is so much that is not making sense in what we have going on in our surroundings. That what the saying is, what's up and what is up is down, and what's down is up at this point. And I think a lot of us can really attest to seeing that in our environments. I've seen it just on YouTube, so I know it can be um, applicable to that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and go. I'll do one more clip on here just to give a little more. Um, there was one there. I don't think. No, okay. This is downtown LA, and that's Santa Barbara, California. Thank you to everybody coming into the stream. Please tap that like button on your way in. Greetings, Strawberry Shortcake. Thank you for coming in. Peace and blessings to you, real life. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank everybody. So we're just talking about the homelessness, even though it's in a, pretty much countrywide or US spread wide. It's particularly hit California really,
Jesus.
really hard. And so we're just kind of starting
What
out by
is this
showing, okay,
place?
yeah, this is what I
Is this
wanted
art?
y'all to see. This is crazy.
This was all something.
So the videographer said that he drove through California for a whole month. and he went from northern or southern to northern California. So he's covered, a lot of different parts of the whole state to be able to provide the contrast in the footage of, of course, the nicer areas, the beach fronts, as opposed to the concentrated areas where there's so much homelessness. Now, this type of scenery right here, actually, this looks pretty nice for curbside and for to be on the street. That looks better than some people's houses, in my opinion. On the inside, it's clean, it's organized. It's just out on the sidewalk. And this is what's going on with the border issue, and particularly in Chicago, and New York, where people are actually on the side of on the sidewalk because they have nowhere to put all these people that are coming over. I don't know why I can't get that picture right there, but hold on. There we go. So, this is like becoming the norm, and we can't let this happen. This is crazy. There is enough to where nobody should be homeless, in my opinion, and I'm going to expound on that, because there are examples in the next video, or the last video clip that I'm going to show, and it's going to be short, but it's going to show the difference between the level of homelessness in California and the level of homelessness in Texas, and why they're so vastly different. The numbers, the accommodations, the lack of housing, in California compared to Texas, the way that it's funded, and all of that. So, let me look at the welcome, L Boogie. Yes. Okay, so let me see. L Boogie says, yeah, I was a box truck driver, and it's very similar where you go, but there is most definitely a lot of land. We could propose to offer land to folks who enter rehab, etc., and start their lives over. Absolutely. There should absolutely always be programs in place for those trying to help themselves and that need a hand up for a new and fresh start. We've all been there, to one degree or another. I know I have. I have, you know, I've had it, to where I thought I had it all. And then, I took a dip and had to go back home with mom and dad when I was younger, after I had been out on my own doing very well. But life circumstances and decisions put me back, and it humbled me. And I was like, okay, so this ain't working for me. So now I'm going to have to, try something different. Right. Salute to you, Mel W. Thank you for coming in. T. Smith always has some relevant comments to make. He says it used to come on cable TV, the city and town government officials of what plan they had for the city, but now anybody want to find out, it's better just to call the mayor for the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, they don't put anything on TV anymore if it's not a distraction, in my opinion. When it comes to being informative and providing relevant information in order to help them, the citizens, whether it's on a local level or a national level, and the effort is not there, nor is the desire, because they want to keep our head in the sand so they can carry out their agenda, which is, those plans have been in place for, either decades to centuries. Who knows? We don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is that by the time these things come to pass, there has been a lot of, information that we weren't privy to. And so there was no way for us to prepare in order to be able to get through it, untouched or unscathed. So absolutely. CC says, damn that Hollywood, California, geez, am in San Diego. You know what, CC, and it just seems like it's not really discriminating anymore. I remember living in Sacramento for about a year, and I didn't care. I don't ever remember. Now, I'm not saying you didn't have your poorer neighborhoods, but even to my recollection, they were clean. The city actually took care of the roads, of the trash. It just seemed a very pleasant place to either live, visit, pass through. I remember I used to get up and go jogging in the mornings. The air seemed really clean. The lungs were always really clear, and I just felt absolutely wonderful when I got home, and I always wanted to stay outside. And so I know he did I don't know if I showed it, but he did a clip on this video in Sacramento, and it's unrecognizable to me. Absolutely unrecognizable. El Boogie says, that's crazy, man. People found comfort in concrete homes and fend for themselves every day. No, let me tell you, this tiny home thing is becoming so widespread. But though that's a very feasible concept, because there are so many people that are in need, and they just don't have the supplies, the resources. They have the land, in my opinion, but these places have to be built, infrastructure has to be created. There's just a lot that goes into um building a home, whether it's cookie cutter or not. So definitely I agree with that. Okay, so let's see. Gonna just scroll down to the bottom. Hey, Miss Your Thoughts, thank you for coming in. Greetings to you. Greetings, greetings. Happy Sunday, everybody. Okay, so I'm gonna do this second video, and this one's going to really kind of break down. This is called Lost Angeles, City of Homeless, and it definitely puts into more perspective and gets a lot more specific as to the opinion of some experts as to how we got here. There are some people that have been in the community for a long time that has watched it deteriorate, and so they're more aware of the intricacies and the inside information as to how we got to this place. So there's going to be some clips that I show. I'm definitely not going to show the whole thing, but again, for anybody that knows me, I always put the description, I mean the links to the video sources and the references in the description. So feel free to, at your own leisure, to go back and check out these videos in their totality. They're full of great information, but for fair use to be in effect, I definitely just want to point out key points. CC says nobody should be homeless or hungry. That part I get it. El Boogie said, not the tiny homes, just the sidewalk home. Okay, I got you. No, they get very content. They get very comfortable. Now, there's a part of me that definitely wants to live off the grid. I would love to live off the grid. But I say that not ever having to have lived off the grid. So I might be saying that in naivety um first, but I'm open. I am definitely open. I just want to be functional, and I want to, it takes a lot of information to learn how to be self-sufficient. It's not unless you were groomed in it and you were raised in it from a small child. You have to unlearn and relearn, because we've become so dependent upon outside entities to sustain our needs, that there's a lot of information that is required in order to be able to navigate in the outside world and to do it effectively. Okay, so again, this video is called Lost Angels, City of Homeless. Oh, wait a minute. I gotta share my screen. My bad, y'all. Y'all put it in this video. Chat if you can hear it for me, please. Hey, Rondi, thank you for coming in. No, this ain't it. My bad, y'all. This ain't, I don't know what happened. This ain't the right video. Okay, got it. Boom, 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 boom.
Type and
let's go back. I want to go to 816. Okay.
Weight, it's not easy. Most people don't understand.
Okay.
It's really hard, especially with not being able to get around very easily. That's my wheelchair right there. I need a new hip. So it's kind of taking its toll. Can't move around, so gain more weight. Not easy. Most people don't understand that it's, I mean, little things. Wanting to go use the bathroom somewhere and they don't let you. They don't let you. Doctors won't help. Do everything you can to avoid homelessness.
This isn't just a point in time now that we are addressing. This has been a part of American society, a part of Los Angeles, a part of California since its very beginning.
Okay, let's read that. Before I read that, T. Smith, don't drive and text. Don't do that in the rain or the good weather. I need for you to get to your destination safe, please, and thank you. Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly. And we got Miss Chicago that says, I know a lot of homeless people who choose to be homeless and really don't have to be. They have loving families that care, but they choose homelessness. That's a whole nother conversation. There is some emphasis that is put on that, in my opinion, Miss Chicago. However, there are, and we're going to get into some of the statistics, as the footage goes along, but there definitely, because I think between drug use, mental health, being homeless, I think there's a lot of correlation between those. And so definitely when you get into a certain space, you don't want nobody telling you nothing. You don't want the responsibilities of having to pay bills, of having to be on the hamster wheel, so to speak. And so your whole mindset is different when you are living outside or out in the homeless territory, as opposed to being secure in four walls. There's a lot that goes with both of them, so I definitely agree with that. I just think that there's so many, it's such a multi-layered issue that everybody's circumstances makes it tailor-made to their situation and their personal journey. So this says homelessness in Los Angeles dates back to the late 19th century, when migrant workers arrived in droves on the Southern Pacific Railroad. Oh my God. And history just looks like it's repeating itself. We haven't dealt with the homelessness. And this is talking about the going as far back as the late 19th century. Here we are in 2024, and we're letting more people in now than we ever did, when we have more people that live within the country and that need and that pay and that work and that pour into the country in order to be able to benefit from some of the or when in need, to be able to benefit from some of the resources that are made available, whether it's on a federal level, state, or local. But now we're you got kids in New York City that are being sent home to learn remotely from school while they house the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, into those schools. I don't know where they do that at. I ain't never seen a country outside of this. I never knew this country would do it, but I've never seen a country outside of our country that has ever done anything to that magnitude. And there's a lot of countries that are less suited for outside people coming in. But I mean, I have to have a passport to go outside this country, and most of us do. So I'm not understanding how we got here, but nevertheless, we are here, right? So let's see.
Los Angeles during that time period was a place where young white men would come to find work. You had single room occupancy hotels, you had bars. And so like the early Skid Row of Los Angeles is kind of the story of young downtown Los Angeles, of young people coming in, trying to find their way and then moving on to their next location. Now Skid Row becomes the Skid Row that we know of it in the 1940s and 1950s when that population begins to stay.
If you haven't been to the Skid Row area, it's horrifying. It's heartbreaking. An area of 50 plus blocks in downtown LA where the services were all in place there. The shelters were all in place.
So in the 1970s, you see this explosion of all of these services in these communities. And the communities responded by saying, we don't want these services in our communities. We want them somewhere else. And that somewhere else became Skid Row.
For a long time, the solution to homelessness was to contain it, as opposed to trying to come up with actual solutions. It was basically, if they're out of sight, out of mind kind of approach.
There was a very distinct border of who was in Skid Row and like where they were allowed to go. And so there was this buffer of Skid Row from the rest of downtown Los Angeles. Even like the street signs and the crosswalks were different. If you were in Skid Row compared to the other side of downtown LA, there were more police at the borders, etc.
And to think that that's an American city in the heart of Los Angeles, just blocks away from the finance capital of Los Angeles, you see this is horrific. And it's something that we should all as a nation be ashamed of, that we've allowed the policies to exist to create this sort of environment in the middle of our city.
We had a huge issue in the late 1990s, early 2000s of other cities sending their homeless populations into Los Angeles. People being dropped off on Greyhound with a one-way ticket just dropped into the middle of Skid Row in the middle of it.
Sound familiar? See all these tour buses making all these, with these companies making all this money by busing the migrants from one city to the next. Even in some instances, they're flying people back home or here or to and fro, wherever they want to go. I ain't never seen somebody give me a free ticket to go where I want to go, especially coming in from the United States into a foreign country. So y'all can tell I'm feeling some type of way about that. But there's definitely a lot of similarities. So it's always said, if you want to know what your future is going to look like, then look at the past. And so this has been eye-opening for me because, of course, I wasn't here at the beginning of the 19th century, but now historically, this is being revealed to us that this is not the first time that they've done this. So that just reinforces my ideology that this is by design and it's intentional. So now what I want to do on a personal level is I want to find out exactly what the outcome of this was and how it fit into the agenda of the government to allow this statewide and federal, right? And so it may give us an idea as to what direction we're currently going in, because it seems like history is definitely repeating itself. So yeah, that's where we are with that. Hold on, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because I think the point has been made. So just bear with me here. I've got some 2247, some markers that emphasize some certain points. Okay, so here's a statistic I wanted to cover. Okay, no, I want to go. Yeah, that man I want to hear. Let's see.
2008, I had a construction company, and the economy just hit. I was frustrated that hit.
Our situation was due to financial strain, not to drug addiction, not to alcoholic addiction, not to the lack of education or effort, but to the fact that we were struggling in terms of having enough finances to pay for a roof over our head.
How many people are one paycheck away from being on the street? How many people have family members that they can call and be reassured that they won't end up on the street until they can transition and recuperate from whatever situations they're currently going through? How many of us are one paycheck away from looking like these people we're looking at on this screen? When I say that this is humbling, it is humbling for me personally, because it reminds me, and I'm not saying that God is not in these people's lives. I can only speak and say that I know he's working in mine, because there have been several instances where this could have easily have been me at some point in my life, and it wasn't. And by God's grace, I'm grateful for that. And it empowers me to pray for those that are going through what I have been spared. So this says 59% of newly homeless in LA County cite economic hardship as their main reason for ending up on the street. That's over half, y'all. Hey Trina, what we doing? Hey Nene, thank you for coming in. I know this hits home for Trina, because she's out here amongst the people, blessing them on a day-to-day basis. And so that we definitely I want to say thank you. We want to say thank you, Trina, because we know what you're doing, right? So much love. But 59% of newly homeless in LA County cite economic hardship. We can't forget that California is one of the most expensive places to live, or states to live. So, you know, when you go and you relocate, or you're raised, and you know your job income does not meet the demands of the prices of the cost of living, it's going to definitely cause some strife, right? And that's over half. So that's not surprising, but at the same time, it's like once you see it in writing and in numbers, it kind of resonates differently for me.
There are those with drug addiction, with a criminal record, with the mental health issues. We've all seen them. There's also the mother who lost her job, who's in a domestic violence situation and just had to get out, living in the car with the kids.
Just went through domestic violence, stayed too long, eventually was like, yo, this is not the life I want for my kids. I never want my daughter to feel like it's okay to be hit, and I never want my boys to feel like it's okay to hit. So it's time to leave. And I left. And that then left me homeless and at risk.
So this says 32.4% of LA's county homeless populations is female. And of that 32.4%, 49% report a history of domestic violence. So we got 32% of the homeless population are women. Let that sit and resonate for a second. Wow. Cece said everything is expensive. Man, listen. Now it just seems like you used to be able to decipher, and know that you were living in a certain region of the country based off of the cost of living, the land, the real estate, the food, the accessibility. Now it's just all coming together to seem like everything is looking the same across the board.
Being a female out here alone, if you guys only knew what we go through. I got stabbed. Bad man.
She's been stabbed. And she's still out there. Now you talking about mental health being challenged. Can you imagine being stabbed and you still have to navigate and live out in the same environment that you were wounded and that you were attacked in? This is crazy.
In my own spot. I've gotten raped out here.
We're all focused on the visible homeless out there. When in actuality, the overwhelming population of the homeless are the invisible homeless.
I think of that young man from foster care who's couch surfing. That's homeless. I think of the young girl from foster care who was living in her car. She'd shower at the Y each day.
Foster youth, unfortunately, represents a large portion of the homeless population. And because of the lack of services, or wraparound services, of when these individuals turn 18, we start to see like a really big increase by the age of 21 of these individuals living on the streets.
My bad, y'all. 1 in 4 of California's former foster youth report having experienced homelessness in the 2 years after aging out of the system. So that's a quarter. That's a quarter of, so 1 in 4 that come out of the foster system end up homeless at some point. And to me, this all goes back to the lack of support, the lack of community, the lack of our natural affinity to care about our fellow brother and sister, the welfare. You got immediate family members that don't care, sadly, sometimes if their sister, their brother, their mother, their father, their child, their aunt, their uncle, if anything happens to them, they're able to just get past it and move on. They're not there for each other. You have parents or mom and dads or matriarch and patriarchs of the family that passed away, and the children are fighting over stuff. And so with this lack of familial energy, the homelessness is going to continue to deteriorate and get worse.
When you're in foster care, you're often bouncing around from home to home. So already you lack stability. You perhaps have lost touch with the birth family. And then if you have lost time in school, you're behind in your education, how much do you feel about yourself? And so we expect these kids to emancipate from the system and say, here you go, world, have at it.
It's so hard when you get out of that system and you're looking for like the resources or the support, and you're going to people who've never experienced these things. They can't relate. They're like, well, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just, it's not that easy.
Of all the people experiencing homelessness, African Americans are disproportionately represented.
You know where the black community in LA is now? It used to be Leimert Park. You know where it is now? Skid Row.
So the black population as a percentage, 9% of LA County, 33% of that 9% are homeless, and 59% is on Skid Row. You telling me this is not by design? Trina says, Miss Akemi, I just have one person I feed every day died on me when it snowed in Memphis. I went to his funeral Saturday. My condolences, Trina. My goodness, that's a horrific way, in my opinion, to go. However, I'm praying that they are at peace and that you have found some peace through that experience as well, because at least they're not suffering anymore. Michelle Thought says people would be surprised at the violence that goes on amongst the homeless people. Yeah, I don't know if I would be surprised. I'm just gonna keep it 100. When it's like you got this cocktail of people being paranoid, of being uncertain about, where their next meal is going to come from. So now they're anxious. A lot of drugs, now you got to deal psychologically. The whole composition of your brain has been altered because your life has been altered. And now the things that you didn't have to focus on and worry about before, now they're number 1 and 2 on the priority list of survival mode, right? So let me just, I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and I'm going to go to the mental health clip, which I think is very important, and it ties into what we're talking about.
Well, let's look at the history of the African American population in LA alone. We've all heard of redlining, or lack of ability to get a home loan, or lack of services, or mass incarceration. If you have generations of families without a father in the home, or an ability to climb the ladder of your career, then you're going to have systemic problems.
What would you tell people about life as a homeless man? It ain't fun out here. Don't trust anybody. I don't know. I don't want to be homeless anymore. That's for sure.
Based on the history of black folks in America coming out of Jim Crowism, 99 years of that, and then 245 years of chattel slavery, and all it has generational effects. Black homelessness manifested as a consequence of systemic racism.
You can't deny racial inequity or institutional bias in our country when you see homelessness disproportionately affects people of color. It also disproportionately affects the elderly.
When you turn a certain age in life, they start putting them in a box, and those jobs for older people that you could count on, they don't
they didn't deal with that anymore. It's more for the young people. And my husband is a veteran, and he worked hard for what he does and how he does it, but things didn't work out that way.
These statistics are alarming to me. Miss, your thoughts? Yes, everyone is in survival mode daily. However, sis, when I walk out my house, my senses are a lot more acute than they are within the confinements of my four walls. So I totally agree with you. We definitely, but I think there are also different levels of survival mode as well. So no, definitely there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. So this says among LA County's homeless, nearly 6,300 are seniors over 62 years old, and more than 3,900 are veterans. Veterans, OMG. The way that the veterans are treated in this country is shameful. I feel that way about elderly people too, but the veterans definitely first on the list. They have always been easily, in my opinion, discarded once they come back and they're no longer active duty. And now the resources and the benefits and perks of being in active duty or becoming military, yeah, they just either they're not as they were described, or they haven't been shown how to access those and navigate through the eyes of the military, retired, active duty. I may not be saying that right, but I think you kind of picking up what I'm putting down. I just feel like the veterans are sorely and severely mistreated, underappreciated, and undervalued. And that to me has always put the way that this the do dirties actually govern this country. I've always thought that they were POSs, right?
When we think about all the ways people can enter homelessness, oftentimes what we see is that our system has failed. Not the homeless services system, because we catch them when they get here, but the other social safety nets have failed.
There are all sorts of individual stories for homelessness, which is why it's impossible to have one giant solution to homelessness, because homelessness is a collection of 40,000 individual problems in Los Angeles and 70,000 individual problems in Los Angeles County and 150,000 problems in the state of California. Every story is unique.
That part, right? So I think I mentioned that earlier in the stream, is that everybody has their own personal experience and journey that led them to become homeless, and nobody's two stories are the same. I think also a lot of these programs are federal. And so when you're dealing with federal programs, everything is put into a box, and it's a one size, seems like they have a one size fits all approach to solving an individualistic problem, and a tailor-made journey to how they got to that point. So and then of course there's always seems to be an end or a cap on those resources, because as soon as that phase is open, or that deadline, or that federally funded program opens, then there's a deadline. Unless that cap has been reached, people are going to be acute to that, and they're going to scuffle for that, and they're going to compete to be first. And so definitely the need is a lot greater than the availability and the resources. And so that in this system has miserably failed in helping to assist to solve the problem. So I'm going to go to the mental health aspect of it. And this made me sad, y'all.
I'm here mainly because I had things in my own life that were out of control, and unfortunately I didn't get the help that I needed quick enough. I think someone let me fall down in the cracks, right? And I think when you get so far removed from certain systems, like when you need absolutely everything, it really astonished me like how off the grid I became to the world and how hard it became to solve any of my problems.
We have an open air mental asylum right now that is destroying LA.
The number of people on the street suffering from mental illness is far greater than anyone realizes. And which came first, chicken or the egg? Did they decompensate because they're on the street? Or in fact, did they end up on the street because they weren't properly getting the care they needed?
You can't stay sane, sober, or safe on the streets.
These are serious progressive illnesses. They are progressive and they often end in death. And so anything other than attempting to interrupt and treat that is moving somebody in a horrible direction.
I think it's really important to realize that homelessness is a traumatic event, that even if you weren't a drug addict before, becoming homeless can change you. And it changes
that part. That's why I think I made the statement where they all kind of intertwine and they correlate with one another. What else is there when you're living out on the street, unless you're able to function and be a productive member of society by, having employment, having some structure? I don't know how viable that is, being homeless. This broke my heart, because it's real and it's so rampant. It's everywhere. And we got to be able to do something about this.
you physiologically.
And the psychoses on the street are due to primarily three things: bipolar disorder, schizophrenia of various type, and methamphetamine. And methamphetamine bleeds over to the other two as well. The kind of meth that is being brought to us through Mexico right now is of a new variety, and it induces psychosis very quickly.
Potent drugs are dirt cheap on the street. I have special compassion for those with addiction issues. My own brother died of a drug overdose. To see somebody turn to drugs to mask pain, to mask heartbreak, is really what I saw with my own brother.
We're enabling dependency and we're normalizing deviancy. We got to end everything that does that.
The way I think about it is,
I want to have him repeat that.
Is of a new variety, and it induces psychosis very quickly.
Potent drugs are dirt cheap on the street. I have special compassion for those with addiction issues. My own brother died of a drug overdose. To see somebody turn to drugs to mask pain, to mask heartbreak, is really what I saw with my own brother.
And that, in my opinion, is by design. Like when you go to a grocery store and you get organic produce, fruits and vegetables, it's more expensive because it's more pure, right? You go to get procured drugs, and the stronger it is and the more potent it is, the cheaper it is. Let them take care of themselves. That's one less problem we have to deal with.
Enabling dependency and we're normalizing deviancy.
We are enabling dependency and normalizing.
We got to end everything that does that.
The way
deviancy, right? So that, to me, that was powerful, but true, sadly true. Mental health there is a system in place, and I want to say, there's a part of this video, I don't think I bookmarked it, but in the Robert F. Kennedy era, during that presidency, he actually passed a bill and established a bill to close down a lot of the mental health facilities because the synopsis was that they weren't working. Families were having a real issue with the elderly or the mentally ill being put in nursing homes, in mental institutions, being confined and set apart from the family. Again, that is just one avenue to separate the family. You go into most other cultures, and not only do they respect and revere their elders, but it is shameful for you not to care for the elders in your family. You keep them home. I remember my parents, when they went, through their illnesses, to their transitions, they were at home with me, both of my parents, and they passed at different times. They had two different types of illnesses. And there is no way I was putting either one of my parents into a medical facility for some strangers to care for them. And so we've lost that. But what happened is when Robert F. Kennedy passed that bill, it was Ronald Reagan during his presidency and his tenure that he actually closed. He did the act of closing a lot of those institutions down. And so whether those institutions worked or they didn't work, the fact of the matter is that now you've put all of these people back out into the street and you've given them nothing to cope with, right? Yes, Miss Yo Thoughts. Back in the day, we had beds in the living room, those fold out couches that went out into beds. Yes, ma'am. Or the rollaway beds, right? So welcome to everybody that's coming in. Hey, Dimple D. Dimple D, Dimple D. Thank you for coming in. No drama, no problem. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And for anybody that's in the bushes, thank you for being in the bushes. I'll take it. Okay. As long as you're gaining some edification from this stream. Don't hesitate to go through the playback or the replay at your leisure. I didn't anticipate for this to be a terribly long live, but I don't want to shortchange it either because there is a lot of pertinent information that I wanted to actually convey during this live. So for those that are have the ability and the desire to stay through the whole thing, God bless you. And if not, there's always the replay. I understand people have real lives, real responsibilities, and real duties. And I also understand that Sunday tends to be family day for many of us, and I respect it. Okay.
Think about it is Prop 47, Prop 57, AB 109. That just tells my patients, the drug addicts, that you can come here and support your habit. Enjoy. There'll be no consequences, and you can steal to support it, and it's on. It's on. And that's how you kill drug addicts. Good job, everybody.
Bingo. That's the whole end game. They want to get rid of people. They want to have one less problem, one less mouth to feed, one less person to have to fill out an application for a bed, a meal, a resource for foods that they just let them take care of themselves. And the sad part about it is that most people that OD or that get, most, not everybody, that get strung out on drugs, they're at a hopeless state anyway, and most of them feel like nobody gives a damn about them at that point, right? So Mel W says, have you ever been to DC to observe the homeless epidemic that happens right under the nose of our federally elected officials? Mel, I actually lived in Upper Marlboro, Maryland for about a year. So yes, I'm very, very acutely aware. Where I live, the base, Andrews Air Force Base, was actually less than 2 miles from my house. But if you took a right instead of that left to go to the Air Force Base, you were in Southeast DC. And it was like a twilight zone. So it went from paved roads to brick roads. It went from white people to nothing but black people. You saw vendors on the road. You saw people hustling. The construction of the roads and the lanes were totally different. But there was literally one block separating Upper Marlboro, Maryland to Southeast DC. Right? So no, and the poverty that is not, once you get into the crux of all of the national or the federal buildings, oh, it's gorgeous. They got the lake, they keep all the grounds pristine. Everything is just picture perfect. But go 2 or 3 blocks outside of that, I know exactly what you're speaking of. And that was an eye-opener for me. And I actually went through that experience in my very early 20s. And so I've been waking up for a while to the reality of the real world that we live in and the truth behind the scenes instead of just what's put before us, right? Okay, so let's go to, okay, actually I did mark it. So this is going to echo, or I echoed what this clip is going to say, and it's going to give some perspective about 740, about the insane asylums, the mental health facilities, and the a little bit of a backstory about that.
The federal government had always distributed the care of the mentally ill to the states. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them that right to take care of the mentally ill. So things were done at the state level.
In the 1960s, we had a lot of mental institutions in California that were not very good and that were seen as depriving people of their rights. And it got so bad, and people were so outraged of basically locking somebody up and throwing away the keys, that we made a lot of that illegal.
With respect to mental illness, our chief aim is to get people out of state custodial institutions and back into their communities and homes without hardship or danger.
President Kennedy, the last signature he put to a document before he went to his fateful trip to Dallas was the Community Mental Health Act, which created the circumstances to completely destroy the state mental health system in the name of community mental health centers. The stated mission of the community mental health centers was to prevent mental illness, not treat it, prevent mental illness. And no provisions were made for all the patients coming out of the state hospitals. Hundreds of thousands of people with very serious mental illness were disgorged to the streets, the nursing homes, and the prisons. They belong in none of these places. They were an abject failure, and they were finally closed by President Reagan in the 80s. That's where this notion that President Reagan closed the hospitals. He did not. It was President Kennedy, and then finally Reagan put an end to the Community Mental Health Act.
When I hear this thing about Reagan closed the mental hospitals, he was done being governor in 1975. He's been dead for almost 20 years. You've got to be kidding me. This has been an entirely run Democratic city and Democratic state for most of the last 20 years. They're in charge.
There was concern that there was overreach, particularly on the part of American psychiatry. The psychiatrists were too at their liberty to hold people against their will, put them in psychiatric hospitals. There were ample evidence of excesses. It was egregious. Lantern and Petra Short ran all the way in the other direction, where you could not be held against your will unless you wanted to kill yourself, kill somebody else, or had something called gravely disabled.
Right now, you could put somebody in what's called a 5150 hold, which takes them off the streets for a couple days, and then they're back on the streets doing the same thing.
What happens after 3 days? Are we magically going to solve a chronic mental illness in 3 days? It takes weeks or months to get somebody clear enough that they start to realize what's been happening to them.
I would argue that with meth and with crack, the impact that's had on individuals' brains have really created a whole different dynamic as it relates to the mentally ill.
This is a long process. Brain disorders take a long time to treat. And then they will look back and go, oh my God, who left me on the street like that? What were you thinking? Why didn't somebody help me? You see how upset I get. It is, you can't imagine how helpless and frustrating it is. You take an oath to help people. I have a skill set where I could specifically help this population and possibly restore them to a flourishing life. And you're told, just walk over these people, walk by, don't help.
I need to change Lantern and Petra Short Act to expand what constitutes gravely disabled. We just need to have the capacity to involuntarily commit people. It should be more than just a pop singer with a multi-million-dollar bank account that can be under conservatorship. It should be the person dying on the street corner. Is their lives valued less because they're not a pop singer?
The worst, that part. Okay, I know I let that go a while, but it was hard to pause it. You know, I want to expound on that just a little bit, because most of that was self-explanatory. When he spoke of the celebrity compared to the person laying on the street, and how Dr. Pinsky was told, instead of helping them, walk over them. And unfortunately, it's been normalized to the point where that's what I see people doing. Instead of giving them a helping hand or asking them, is there anything that they need or anything that maybe they can do in order to assist them in that moment, even if it's just for that moment. That's what I mean by self-reflection and accountability. Just because it isn't our problem or it doesn't affect our daily lives does not mean that it's not our responsibility to help, right? So I thought that was very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to the political aspect and the effects that politics has on the homeless, which to me should have been first, because with the political system being so flawed and so, in my opinion, selfish, and that's a kind word that I'm using in context to that. You know, if that political aspect did what it was supposed to do and everybody used their power appropriately, then most of this would have taken care of itself, in my opinion.
What got us here is literally politicians that have ascribed to the woke ideology that we cannot address homelessness and we cannot regulate public space, so they can park anywhere they want, do whatever they want with no consequences. And if we do anything, well, we lack compassion, or we're racist, or we're going to criminalize poverty, all these buzzwords. It's political will.
This problem is not for a lack of hard work, of smart people working on it, of money, of dedication, of compassion. Yet it's still there because there's no urgency.
The social services, the politicians, they are addicted to the drug of helping the homeless because it creates money, it creates political power. They can't help it.
That's key. That is key. So while these people are on the street becoming addicted to substances and drugs and hard drugs, the politician's drug is the power and the money, because homelessness generates money, right? Miss Yo Thought says it's important to do research on how these institutions got started, the who, the what, and the why. It's crazy how they have continued growing for centuries. Yeah, Yo Thoughts, because they're being governed by the same people. So the governing bodies have not changed. That's why the origin of these institutions and the way that they're still being run today yield the same outcome. So even though the system may be tweaked here and there, or you got one system that's abolished and another recreated, usually the outcome, the desired outcome, it's still the same. But you're right, it is absolutely important. It's just important to do research on anything that affects us as a whole, because if it affects us as a whole, it's going to affect us individually on some level. And so that's where I am on that. There's a little bit more of this.
I mean, look, you can pick Hollywood, the subway system, Venice, downtown LA. You can pick any specific area and clean it up if you have the political will, the motivation, the housing available, even if it's temporary. I mean, that's what happened in Echo Park. That's what happened in Venice.
It's what you saw at the VA. For years, ground zero of the national embarrassment when it comes to veterans and homelessness was the VA, this massive, sprawling campus in the middle of West Los Angeles, where there were all these homeless people lined.
Okay, so he said that this was at the VA. Well, if you took better care of your veterans, then it may have been somewhere else, and it affected a different demographic of people than the people that have served to keep this country safe and to keep it progressive. You can't just, you're not going to be blessed. And that's one of the reasons I feel that this country is going through what it's going through, is because it has been so egregious on how it treats its own people. So we're not discounting how it treats other countries, or how in the scheme of things, we're the most hated country out of the world powers. However, or the continents. But however, you can't just, there was a time where they were drafting our kids. If you were 18 and there weren't enough signing up voluntarily, they were picking them out the house. And if you didn't go, you're going to jail. Okay. And then you send them over there, you bring them back, you don't give them proper mental health assistance, you don't check up on them, you don't evaluate them, you don't give them the tools in order to adjust back to the society of this country, as opposed to going over there and seeing such horrendous acts of war that you can't just erase because you come back home. But then you don't take care of them, and then you wonder why they're posting up shop by the VA. That's just my opinion. I'm just wondering why he mentions the VA and they're all over the place. They're not just in front of the VA, but you're mentioning the VA because evidently, and you in this picture, you can see all the flags are on each tent. So it has to be veterans, in my opinion.
Up on the street outside, not even able to get in on the campus and get any help. For years, this problem festered, so much so that people started handing out tents with American flags, and there's this lineup of American flags on the street, and then the government not really helping these people.
I agree that this is completely unacceptable. That's why I'm here.
When the Veterans Affairs Secretary from Washington came to see it for himself, then something was done. When
they knew that there's something needed to be done before then. How much you want to bet $2 to a bucket of shit that these people, that it made the mainstream media before this was done? So it had to reach a certain mass of people in order for this to be brought to light and addressed. Okay, it's making me mad. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this finish, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Because I know it's been a lot of information dropped. I appreciate those that are here that have stayed through the duration. You know, I don't get emotional about a lot, but when it comes to people and how they're treated and just the simple act of humanity and treating people with the same respect that you would want somebody to treat you, I have a problem with that. And I don't try to hide that.
LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva made it a point to visit that sidewalk encampment when he had his deputies out there at least once a week. Then all of a sudden, they said, okay, we really need to tackle this issue. And my goodness, overnight, the camp was cleaned up.
In the span of like a month and a half, they're all gone. It's like they were able to clean it up. And part of the way they were able to do that was opening up a tiny home village on the grounds there.
Those unhoused veterans, people who served our country, they were given shelter on the property, literally feet from where they have been camped out for years.
What you saw at the VA shows that if there's a political will, things can get done. You can cut through the red tape if you've got the right people saying this needs to stop.
It's the same thing that we saw happen in Venice along the Venice Boardwalk. When people in power, in leadership, want to get something done, they can. That's what they proved.
In Venice alone, they have 340 businesses. They employ 10,000 employees. And they're the #2 tourist destination, all of Southern California.
Yo, Alex!
When we got there, it was exactly as everyone said. People acting strangely. There was a dearth of tourists. Most of the shops were boarded up, and there was wall-to-wall tents covering the entire strand. You cannot see the beach, the water from the boardwalk. And the overwhelming smell wasn't salty air, but urine and human waste.
I'm here. I've been here quite a bit. I just don't call the press when I do it.
All that little fake grinning and I miss me with all of that. Y'all knew those people when they came back from service. You knew that those people had needs. Again, I am saying, and I will stand on this 10 toes down, that it took bad publicity for this to be addressed, and that is horrible behavior, in my opinion. You know, I wish that more politicians, because you know now you're aware that there's loopholes to where politicians' family members don't have to serve in the military. Okay, there are videos out about this. I've been watching for years. People in the Senate and in the House of Representatives were being interviewed coming and going from work, and the interviewer or the media person was asking them why or how would they feel if their son or daughter had to go and serve active duty military. And honey, some of those responses would floor you, right? So yeah, I just, this is crazy to me. So I am glad that at least there was enough, and that's the power of the good side and the potential power of social media and people actually becoming vocal and speaking out about these egregious acts, because that's what's going to spark change. We walk around and you keep our heads down and we keep our blinders on because it hasn't hit our front door or it doesn't affect us directly at this point, is going to allow us to dig a deeper hole for ourselves. We have to become more vocal. We have to become more willing to, just get in the dirt in order to bring awareness to these types of egregious practices, in order for it to spark change, right? So Philly 2K24 said, I'm getting frustrated as well. I've made several comments as a vet, and my comments have been deleted in terms of how vets are treated. Wow. Wow. On this, when you say that, are you speaking like on the platform, in the chat? Is there a specific venue that you're speaking of, Philly? I'm just curious, because that's sad. Yeah, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody, we're quick to say, oh, thank you for your service and this and that and the other, as long as it don't cost us nothing. But when stuff is brought to the front door and dropped right at our feet, now all of a sudden we're going to step over and act like we didn't see it. That's not cool. That's just not how we're supposed to operate. So I'm going to wrap this up. This is almost over.
The sheriff wanting to do something to clean up the Venice Boardwalk, an area that's actually overseen by the LA City Council, as opposed to the County Board of Supervisors. It became kind of a political tug of war there over who's going to make this place clean and safe again.
Councilman Mike Bonin says, well, this was in the works, and if he came in at the last minute, it was grandstanding.
The reality is that this program was in the works before the sheriff ever sort of stepped onto Instagram and started saying this.
But the perception is, and the reality is, that the situation changed dramatically after he got involved.
Ooh, did y'all see that? That was the same block. Let's go through that again. When they cleaned it up, and
Councilman Mike Bonin says, well, this was in the works, and if he came in at the last minute, it was grandstanding.
The reality is that this program was in the works before the sheriff ever sort of stepped onto Instagram and started saying this.
But the perception is, and the reality is, that the situation changed dramatically after he got involved. So I'm not saying Sheriff Villanueva is a model for every elected official, because he does some things that are very controversial, but he has at least created a sense of urgency and got people talking and got people moving.
I was elected sheriff of the entire county, not just parts of the county. And if local government is refusing to address something that has reached crisis level that's jeopardizing people's lives, I have actually a legal, fiscal, and moral obligation to intercede to change it. And that's exactly what we did in Venice. And we're going to continue doing that everywhere.
Whatever you think of Sheriff Villanueva, he's a pretty shrewd politician. And he understands that issue number one is homelessness. He thinks that if he can be the one to take on the establishment, to say what they're doing is wrong, and I'm literally here as a new sheriff in town to clean it up, that's both smart policy and smart politics.
Well, shout out to the sheriff, okay? And shout out to anybody in that particular situation and others that are similar to it that actually are taking a stand for whatever the motivation is. If it's helping other people, I really don't care. People take a stand to help nobody but themselves. So if you are in it to propel your career, as long as you exemplify some type of compassion for your fellow man or your fellow woman, then shouts out to you, and my hat goes off to you. At least somebody's doing something instead of hurting everybody around them in order to get themselves to a level of prestige in their minds that they think they're going to be able to stay at. So with that said, you said, yes, ma'am. In this chat, I didn't use any profanity or words that may have offended anyone, but I do appreciate you in this channel. You already know. Amen. Amen. I'm working on tempering my emotions when it comes to certain topics. Like I said, a lot doesn't really move me, but when I speak on what I'm passionate about, it becomes very apparent. And I don't want to lose that. I just don't want to lose focus on the desired outcome. Now, I do, I'm always about, if there's a problem presented, I would definitely would love to offer some solutions. So I definitely just want to go through a quick list. I don't even have to, most of them are self-explanatory, of things that can be done in order to, not just in California, but abroad, and from city to city, to be able to address the issue and to at least alleviate some of the homelessness issues that exist currently in our country. Of course, now the first thing that I've been saying is, what about rent control? Everybody doesn't own. And there are a lot of people right now that are renting. And where I live, they're erecting apartment buildings every single day, and I'm not exaggerating. So where does the cap go? I remember in New York some years back, they used to have, I forgot what they called it, but it was some type of a rent ceiling where the landlords had, there were bills that were enacted in the state of New York where you couldn't charge over a certain percentage, or you couldn't increase the rent over a certain percentage within the lease, from one lease to the next lease, right? And I don't know how come nobody is bringing that to the forefront, and they're not using that as a catalyst to be able to make housing and the cost of living more affordable. Because once the real estate goes up, every inflation goes up, everything goes up. Everything is determined by the worth of real estate and the market of the real estate industry. So I definitely would love to have that conversation more often, because just since the pandemic, that nobody's talking about it, but you can't tell me that hasn't increased the homelessness by at least 30%. And that is in my opinion, right? So that, and then expand mental health services. There has to be something done about, well, there should be something done, right? So you're dealing with mental health, but a lot of that is because of the drugs, of the trauma. And of course, we're living in a world where spiritual warfare is at its all-time highs. So the enemy is not being able to be seen with the visible eye. But you can look at people and tell when they just look at, this sector that we're in. And I think without naming names, we can kind of figure out, who's been touched by demonic influences. So drugs are used, homelessness is used, mental illness is used, trauma is used. And when you have a culmination of all of those different things, then what do you think is going to be the end recipe, right? So rent assistance programs, just expanding and providing financial assistance to families that are at risk for eviction. Instead of evicting them and then having them go fill out applications and try to seek out resources, by that point it's too late. Because you've heard several, and you will hear several homeless people say, if you can avoid it, don't become homeless. Because once you become homeless, it is so hard to get out of that state. Job training and employment support. They took trading and coding out of schools. They took shop out, home economics. Now you got the STEM program. These kids are coming out and they're not learning what has been designed, or that we learned when we were, coming out of school. Not saying that the school system in my day was great, but it definitely provided more opportunities, in my opinion, than I feel that it does now. So those just are a few different, other avenues to look at. There's so many more, because like I said, this is such a multi-layered issue that it didn't happen overnight. So it definitely would not be remedied overnight, and it won't be remedied by just one or two social programs being implemented, because it runs a lot deeper than just people needing resources. So with that said, thank you for coming. I'm going to drop the link if anybody wants to hit it. I see that there have been a few people that have been engaged in the chat for a minute or during the duration of the live. And I just want to give you that, no pressure, but I want to give you the opportunity to actually come up if you have something that's pressing on your heart, to definitely come up and let's talk about it. I'm always open. We don't have to stay long. And if nobody hits the link, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. But so I've been trying to keep up with the chat, but there's been so much information on my end that I wanted to convey. So I wasn't neglecting the chat. I just didn't, wanted to keep the flow going. especially for those that may come in on the replay instead of being live, and there will be some fluidity in the information that's being provided. So I'll give it another couple minutes. Come on now, if anybody wants to hit the link, feel free. No pressure. There is, hold on. Okay, fair use disclaimer. This information, YouTube, has been used for criticism, comment, teaching, and research under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. So I wanted to kind of caveat that as well. I don't know what y'all got planned for today, but it's where I'm at, it's in the afternoon, but it's still early enough to kind of still have some of the day left. And I'm hoping everybody is well. Hope everybody was able to get some rest. I'm big on rest, y'all. Even though I haven't been getting a lot of it, I know how important it is. And trust me, when it's time for me to shut it down, I know exactly how to do just that without apology. My problem is I run myself until I'm raggedy, thinking that there's a end game. And there's not, because as soon as I lay down and get up, there's a whole nother list of stuff for me to do. So, but all right, y'all. Well, nobody has hit the link, so I'm just gonna say thank y'all for coming in. Thank you for the participation in the chat. I definitely am gonna go back through this live so I can read through the chat. And if anybody felt neglected, I apologize. That was not my intent. Again, I just wanted to stay focused in the direction I was going in, because I'm working on not being so easily distracted. So thank Miss Yo Thoughts, Philly 2K24, No Drama, Mel W, T Smith, and Kwame actually made it in here today. Praise you, praise you. Thank you. Bless your little soul, or your big soul, because ain't nothing about you little. KB, thank you for coming in. CC, L Boogie, Trina, what we doing, Davis? Let's see. I'm trying to think. I know I saw Strawberry Shortcake was in here. So if I missed y'all, I apologize. Ron D, Miss Chicago, Jaga, CC, all of y'all. I appreciate real life. I appreciate your participation. You engaging. I'm thankful to everybody in the bushes. Thank you for everybody. For Leon, welcome, welcome. You're gonna have to go watch the replay. Machine Fit, thank you for stopping through. Jaga, thank you. I appreciate that. I try not to, bore people, but sometimes, if it's not just sheer entertainment, but it's informational, some things will resonate, and that's my hope, and that's my objective. So I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. It encourages me to keep going. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody. If I am able to, I want to pick a lighter topic. I want to be able to mix it up some. So if I find a lighter topic today, I may go live later on this evening, depending on what everybody else is doing. But it's been kind of quiet today. So I have a feeling some of the bigger content creators may be popping out the bushes later, or may not. We'll see. But just keep your notifications on all, so you'll get the notifications when I'm scheduled to go live or to upload videos. If you hit the replay, you can always speed it up past the normal to 1.25 or 1.50, and it'll still be easily heard and dissectable for you to hear it. And then, the live won't last as long, and you can still gain the information. So yes, have an awesome day. You too, Miss Yo Thoughts. All right, Leon. I appreciate you, Trina. Yes, no worries. And I appreciate everybody. And with that, peace and blessings to everybody. And I will see y'all soon.